Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, students, friends, family, everyone on the internet, we've got a new episode. I always say special guest. So I'm going to say a pretty authentic, Aussie, interesting guest. Someone that is extremely cool.
I wouldn't say all that, Emilio. I wouldn't say all that.
I forgot to say someone who's very modest. And today we're going to talk a bit about different cultures, learning languages, and basically receiving people into Australia, going overseas. And I met this guy, our guest here today, when we went to Japan, and we had the chance of showing Melbourne to international students from Japan. And I thought that there is something you said, and I'm gonna quote this back later on. And I said, mate, I have to bring you to the podcast. So let's welcome Billy. Thank you so much for coming, Billy.
Thank you for having me.
And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm an RMIT student. I do the International Studies program, majoring in Spanish as my language.
There we go. We've got a huge following. Lots of people listening speak Spanish. So
hola,
thank you.
¿Cómo está? Mi nombre es Billy. Bienvenidos al podcast de Emilio.
Whoa, gracias.
Gracias.
So you're majoring in Spanish, you said?
Yeah, so I did the languages stream in the International Studies program, which means I have to do 6 units of a language throughout my degree. And I chose to do Spanish because I went to South America and I gained an incredible love for that continent. I think it is probably my favorite continent in the world. I haven't been to them all yet, but I can't imagine anything really top South America. While I was there, I went with my friend who's a Uruguayan, or half Uruguayan. He was born in Australia, but his dad was born in Montevideo in Uruguay. And he taught me Spanish, and I kind of just picked it up a bit quicker than my other mates and kept going. And I came back to Australia and I kept going, and I saw this degree pop up and I thought, that's just perfect, isn't it? All kind of works out perfectly. So yeah, that's why I did Spanish.
Awesome. And as you can tell, you're clearly from Australia. Whereabouts in Australia are you from?
I was born and raised in Melbourne. My father was born in a little country town in New South Wales called Finley. So people sometimes comment on my accent, because I sound a bit more rural, but that's just because I sound like my dad and he grew up rural. My mum was from Kilmore, which is about an hour out of Melbourne, 40 minutes out of Melbourne. And they both went to school together. So that's how they met and had me. Yeah.
Awesome. And I guess, now that you commented on your accent, I'm also guessing that you would have been back to Finley, right? To, visit family, friends, maybe?
Yeah, so it's a country up there, like the small towns all kind of know each other sort of thing. So my dad was born in Finley and he owned a business in a town about 40 minutes away called Yarrawonga, my whaler. It's on the border. So I go up there probably 3 months of the year every year growing up. I'd spent all my summers there. I went to Finley, it was actually 2 weeks ago, last time I was there, doing some family stuff, talking to the aunties and uncles. And
awesome, catching up.
Yeah, living sort of thing.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to start with, breaking some stereotypes because, the typical Aussie, well, obviously it's really tricky describing the typical Aussie, but when we imagine like the typical white man, or like a gringo, I want to ask you about that. When you went to South America, did anyone ever call you gringo?
No, so I always assumed that a gringo was like a foreigner.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to Colombia and my Colombian taxi driver was driving me around and he goes, where are you staying? And we said, Puebla 13. He goes, you'll love it there. There's a lot of Aussies, Englishmen, a lot of gringos. And I said, aren't they all gringos? He goes, no. Here in Colombia, a gringo is just an American. And I said, right. I always thought it was just like a white guy, like a foreigner, yeah. But he said, no, gringos is just for Americans.
There you go. That's probably like an episode on its own.
Yeah, okay.
But cool. And so you weren't called gringo? That's a good check. Never. That's a good check.
What? I got one that made me laugh. Fantasmal?
Yeah.
Like ghost? I thought that was funny. Like, yeah.
So you must have been pale.
Yeah, well, compared to the other people that were there. Yeah.
Cool. And, Billy, I'm just wondering, because growing up in Australia, going to New South Wales, you did mention your friend from Uruguay. And
yes.
And thank you to your friend. Thank you, friend. Because
he'll probably listen to this. I've told him a lot about you. He'd love to meet you.
Cool.
He's He's a funny guy. His name's Leon. If you're watching this, Leon.
Leon, thank you. Thank you for introducing Billy to our beautiful language. And it's interesting. I wanted to ask because, as you know, Australia is far away from everywhere except New Zealand.
Yes.
So it is a bit of a trip to go to South America, let alone saying I'm going to learn Spanish, especially when you've got so many other options. Like, for example, I'm sure growing up, you must have had the option of studying like Italian, Chinese.
Well, funnily enough, my grandmother was born in Italy. She's an Italian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But she, coming to Australia, she and her family made the conscious decision, I guess, to try and assimilate a bit more into Australian culture.
Yep.
And so my mother can understand Italian, but she can't speak it. She never consciously taught my mother Italian and in turn never taught me. Now that she's in her 80s or whatever, she still reads the Italian newspaper every day and she likes to watch her Italian movies. She'll talk to me in Italian, and because I can speak Spanish, I understand a little bit of what she's saying now.
Oh, cool.
But when I go to talk back, she's got no idea what I'm trying to say to her, I guess, because she speaks a very select dialect of Venetian Italian. That's where she's from, Venice.
Oh, sick. Look, and learning Spanish, as I said, you've had lots of options. Did you ever think of learning, I don't know, Italian or Chinese or Indonesian? I mean, I'm thinking of languages that are taught in schools in Australia, and Spanish is not the go-to choice. I suppose if we were in the States, it would make more sense. Yes. But I mean, it's not that common to meet people learning Spanish.
My only exposure to Spanish before going to South America was watching Dora the Explorer.
No way.
Yeah, 100%. I knew how to say hola and manzana, like an apple. And those were the only two words I knew about Spanish before I went. Oh, and gracias and adios. Those are the only words I knew before I went to South America. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about your experience going there? Because, I mean, obviously one thing is going on your own, not knowing anyone, but then going with a friend, it's a bit different. If you watch the news or going with stereotypes, just the same way we would assume the typical white man in Australia would only speak a language and not study or not travel much, or maybe travel but not learn from other cultures, then, as you know...
Bali isn't traveling, Emilio. Bali is just Gold Coast overseas.
Oh, thank you that you said it. But, on the flip side, then you've got our stereotypes to us, and everyone imagines oh, do you all carry guns? Do you know a drug dealer, Emilio? And stuff like that. So I don't know, did you ever have any, worries? How was it before going? Or you just went without much planning? Or
See, because I've spoken to my friend my whole life, and he goes to Uruguay every 3 years, and he's always told me, he goes, I met him when I was 12. From the age of 12, he goes, Bill, one day me and you are going to Uruguay. That's what he's always said.
Whoa.
Yeah. We sat down and had lunch with him one day. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years because of the pandemic. I said, what are you up to, Leon? And he says, I'm going to South America. He goes, me and my other friend are going to do this big trip. And I was like, man, that sounds awesome. He's talking about bucket list things I've always wanted to do. And he goes, yeah, you should come. I was like, oh, don't be silly. He goes, why can't you come? I sat there and went, it's actually... excellent point. There's no reason I can't come. And me and another friend, Marcus, were having lunch with him that day. I looked at Marcus and I said, I think we're going to South America, Marcus. And I reckon we had the lunch on Saturday. I reckon by the next Friday, I had paid for my tickets. Return to Montevideo.
That's such a Latino. That's a true Latino. And thank you, Leon, for inviting him.
Thank you. And Gustavo, which is Leon's father, who was an excellent tour guide. Taught me a lot.
Shout out to Gustavo. Thank you so much. And I hope you like this episode. Yeah. It's going to get better. Also, for anyone else watching, obviously, we're happy to have you in. But,
Oh, and the rest of it is, thank you.
That's pretty cool.
So there was... from the friends, there was 4 of us that went. Me and Leon and Marcus, who I mentioned. Another friend named Scott. We went with Leon's father and his little brother for the first 10 days or so. Leon was there for a couple months before I got there. Then after his dad and his little brother came home, me and the boys went on a 40-day trip around South America. We went to Uruguay, Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. We were in Chile for a day. We were meant to go to Bolivia, but Leon messed up the planning a little bit, but that's okay. And then after they went home, so it's another typical Leon Latino moment. I was at his house one day and he goes, Bill, why are we holding ourselves back to 40 days? Why can't we do 70? I said,
whoa.
Twist my arm. He goes, all right. So then we went to Colombia, we went to Costa Rica, we went to Nicaragua, we went to Mexico, and we finished off in the United States.
Damn, you're more Latino than me, bro. That's crazy. Look, it's going to be probably a really tough question, but I have to ask you, do you have any preference between the countries?
Everyone has asked that. My favorite country in South America, I'm going to say, is Uruguay. I think
tell us more.
Uruguay is like excellent comparison here. Argentina and Uruguay are like Australia and New Zealand. Australia being Argentina and Uruguay being New Zealand. So Uruguay is like Argentina's little brother, is what they kind of fight about, sort of thing.
All right.
But it's so much better. Like Uruguay, it's safe. Like, and yeah, South America has a lot of problems, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's the perfect place in the world because, as we know, there is a lot of problems.
That's right.
But those problems in Uruguay are so minimal compared to the rest of the continent. It is very safe. It has a very strong economy for how small it is. And the whole kind of lifestyle feeling there, and this is what I said about all South America, is that, and this could be a bit of sounds like a bit of a flog thing for me to say, but because they don't have as much money, I feel like people would just enjoy life a bit more. They are a bit happier. They don't, and does that sound right? Do you reckon? Is that like a...
Oh, can you tell us a bit more? Is it like, as in...
I don't know. People are just happier. Like, people come up to me and will just talk. No one has like any reservations. You go to the beach and everyone just enjoying life. And I was there in the summer, which could have a big part to do with it. But I don't know. It just feels like a happier sort of place when I was there.
In Uruguay.
Yes.
Look, I think what we could come up and say is that because they may not have as many problems as other countries, or maybe they have problems, but they're like kind of reduced.
Well,
that could translate into them being friendlier or like being nicer to you as compared to, let's say, Venezuela. It's a beautiful place, but so many problems, let's say. This is not a podcast on politics.
Yes.
Before, before I get cancelled. That could be a good point.
Another thing is, like, in Uruguay, nothing I ever saw made me sad. So when I went to Argentina, when I went to Buenos Aires, and Buenos Aires is my favorite capital city in the world. It's my favorite major metropolis that I've been to. But
bold statements, really nice.
I love Buenos Aires, but I did see like the like not favelas, like the barrios. The slums. When you drive past all the coloured buildings and people who aren't so happy, and that you look at that and you go, geez, that is a different aspect of life. That's something I've never seen before anywhere. In Paraguay, and this is the saddest moment that always sticks out to me, a little boy come up to me, and he would have been, he wasn't old enough to talk. I wouldn't have thought he'd be old enough to. He was barely walking. And he wasn't old enough to talk, but he was old enough to beg. He could hold out two hands and ask for money. And I was just like, that is the saddest thing I've ever seen.
Whoa,
that is crazy.
That's tough.
And that's one of those moments you sit there and go, that would never ever happen in Australia. If someone on the street in Australia saw like a little boy begging, he would be taken straight away. He would be put in a home. He'd be looked after. Like, that stuff doesn't happen here. Yeah.
Yeah, and that must have been quite a big shock.
It was. I still think about it sometimes. When I hear people complaining, and people's complaints are relevant, but at the same time, I think I've seen a little boy, not old enough to talk, but old enough to beg. So everything else kind of seems.
And I guess,
after that.
Something that I normally say to friends or, in general with families, because I guess I was brought up in South America, you see, as you said, some nice things and some really not so nice things.
Yeah.
And then coming to Australia, it makes you really, let's say, grateful of little things. And one example could be with the pandemic, because I remember my wife one time, she came home and he's like, oh my God, the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, love, I mean, it's not amazing, but we're working.
Yep.
We can pay rent.
Yep.
We've got food.
Yep.
I mean, we're not rich.
The
fridge is not full of food, but we've got food. There is a supermarket. There is food there. We can go to Coles. We can go to Woolies. And that was like, oh, true. It's bad what's happening, but it's not as bad as it could be, type of thing.
Yeah.
But you don't always want to, put that in.
Yeah, it's you can't invalidate your own problems. Like, what you go through is completely that's your life. And if things go wrong, things are going to go wrong. But for me, a good fallback, if I'm having a bad day, or if I've had a fight with, me mates or, something, I sit there and I think and go, there is a little boy in Paraguay who doesn't have a home and won't have a home for for the foreseeable future, I'm doing a little bit better than that. So that's kind of for me. That's like the realistic moment of it.
Yeah, it's a good reality check to be grateful of what you've got.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yep.
You know, I mentioned at the very beginning, Japanese students going to Japan.
Yep.
Can you tell us what happened there? Because everyone watching would be thinking, okay, so this guy learned Spanish, South America. I'm sure people love you by now. It's like, this is great. But then what happened? What happened with Japan, Japanese?
So, that's pretty funny. So in high school, at the high school I went to, in year 7, so the first year of high school, you get offered 2 language choices, and you have to do, not even offered. For the first semester, you have to do Italian, and for the second semester, you have to do Japanese. And it's funny because my grandmother is Italian, and I can speak Spanish and that now. But at the time, Italian was the worst subject I'd ever been. Like, that was the worst I've ever done in a subject. I failed like an Italian test. My mum couldn't believe it. She goes, "What do you mean you failed like a test?" I'm like, "I just don't understand it. I didn't know what was going on." And then so I got to second semester, and we started doing Japanese. And the first test I did in Japanese is the hiragana test. And for all those who don't know Japanese, it's the alphabet. And I got 100% on the first test. And my teacher looked at me and she goes, "You're pretty good at this. You should keep doing it." So the next year, you had to choose Italian or Japanese to do for the whole year. I chose Japanese, kept up with it. A good moment was, so in that year I went away overseas for about 8 weeks, and I come back and all my friends who sat next to me had all started failing their tests after I'd left. Because while I was there, I was giving them the answers, like we're all doing fine, whatever. I left, they all failed. Come back, and I got to year 9, so I got to the next year. And by that point, language is optional. So I'm going to say 95% of the year level drops language altogether. I kept doing Japanese. There was 2 Japanese classes, about 40 students, and there was 2 Italian classes, again, about 40 students. The next year, that halves again. You go to about 20. The next year, that 20 dropped to 12. So I was one of 12 students by the end, and I just kept going.
Why do you think that happens? That's question 1. Question 2, what made you continue? Because you are breaking down the stereotype of not learning another language.
Why did I continue? Well, a big motivator was if you got to year 10, you got to go overseas to Japan. You got to do a 2-week study tour.
Whoa.
And as like a 14, 15-year-old, I was like, all right, just push through, it'll be good. And I guess like I was just good at it. And in Australia and Victoria especially, you're always encouraged to do, you have to pick a fine balance of subjects you're good at and subjects you enjoy doing. And I was good at Japan, and I enjoyed doing it. And yeah, so I kept going and I kept going. But by the time it got to the point where you had to start, because for the first 3 or 4 years, you're not doing anything extreme. You're talking like today was Tuesday. The grass is green. You're doing really basic. So when it got to the end, we actually had to start putting work in. My scores got a lot worse, but I was still enjoying it. When I was in the class, I was still having a good time. And I was like, with those language classes, all the boys in there, I went to an all-boys high school, by the way. All the boys in there, you get really close with. We went to Japan together. We were doing class together every day for 6 years, some of them. They were in my class for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no other subject does that. And so, yeah, just kept going. And by the end of my high school, I'd done 6 years of Japanese. Yeah. And then I thought about continuing it in university, my first degree. This is actually my second time attempting a degree. My first degree I did it for about 2.5 years. It was a 5-year double degree. I did Japanese 1 for a semester. It was during COVID as well, so I didn't go to a single class, rocked up to the exam, and I got 70% because I got 70% on the subject because I failed the attendance. You had to hand in all these booklets and stuff like that.
Oh, come on.
Which I didn't do because it was COVID and I wasn't going to go to class. But that was the last. I'm not even going to consider that studying Japanese. That was just me writing down a, I, u, e, o, or the hiragana all over again. That was just basic stuff. So I didn't touch Japanese for 4 years effectively, I'm going to say, until it was pretty funny because it was my birthday and I was sitting there on the couch with mum and I get an email from RMIT that says, "This is the last chance to submit an application for the 2023 Muraran summer exchange program." And I was like, what the hell is this? I haven't heard anything about this. So I open it up. I'm like, "Oh, mum, this is pretty cool. It's 2 weeks. It's in Japan." I was already going to go to Japan at that point. That was my plan. And I was like, oh, is it cool? I can get a full unit of university covered. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, if I hate it, it's only 2 weeks, you know, put up with it, whatever. So I applied on deadline day about 3 hours before the deadline closed, July 31st, which is my birthday.
Same here. That's crazy.
And then sure enough, application got approved. I got to sit down with the interview for going overseas. I didn't even think I thought my application was going to get denied straight away. I don't do Japanese at uni. I have no relation to besides my high school experience. I've got no reason to. There's a
Obviously, you didn't say that in the interview.
No way. Well, so
okay.
So I sit down, and the teacher goes, "Can I ask why did you apply on deadline day?" Because they can obviously see my. I was like, I didn't know about it. I'm a Spanish student, and then they're like, "Oh, you're a Spanish student. Can you speak Japanese?" And I said, "Hi, kantan nihongo o shaberu koto ga dekiru." And she goes, "Oh, so why don't you do Japanese at uni?" And I said, well, because I'm at this weird point where I know enough. Like my speaking and my listening is probably Japanese 4, Japanese 5, but my reading and writing would be Japanese 2. Like it'd be too hard to place me, I feel. Well, that's how I feel. I never tried or anything. She goes, okay, whatever. I thought the second I said I'm not a Japanese student, I was canned. I thought I was done. There's plenty of people that are going to pick here over me. 4 weeks later, you're in. I got accepted. I think I was the only student who didn't do Japanese at uni who got into the overseas program. Yeah.
So maybe all those years of study really helped you.
Yeah.
And you touched on an interesting point that I want to, tell you about because, funny enough, there are lots of international students coming to Australia.
Yep.
Lots of people that come from South America.
Yep.
They only study English in either their undergrad or in high school, like you did with Japanese.
Yep.
So we would have a few classes. I'm going to say, let me round that up to 7 years, like you said, 7 years of education in school where you learn things like the colors, verb to be, all the fun stuff, right?
Yep.
But then they come to Australia and they think, oh, shoosh.
What's going
fish.
on here?
Yeah, it's like, and
hey,
then, exactly. And it's like, okay, and then sometimes they tell me, look, I've got 0 English. Or they feel that their English is close to none.
Yeah.
How did you feel with your Japanese after finishing high school?
Wow.
Or how did you perceive your level?
After I finished high school, I had very minimal interactions with Japanese after I finished high school up until now. I had a friend who I'd text overseas, and that was about the only study I did. I worked at a bakery, and I think twice in those 4 years did a Japanese person come to my, like 2 Japanese people would come to my counter and they'd be talking to each other. So then I'd say, oh, hey guys, like, what do you want? But again, very basic, like nowhere near the level I'm at now. And like, but those were like pretty gratifying conversations. When you can talk to someone, that's gratification, that hard work you've put in pays off. But yeah, incredibly minimal. And so then I was sitting in those like pre-departure sessions and I'm sitting there going, I'm in trouble here. Because I'm looking, I was like, we have to write 3 journal entries in English. I can do that. 2 in Japanese. Oh, that could be a bit hard. And then she said, we have to give a 5-minute presentation in Japanese. And I went home that day and I said to Mum, I think I've got to pull out. I don't think I can do this.
Oh no,
and,
really?
Yeah. And I reckon, and I was like, look, it's a lot of work. It's 2 weeks of uni while I'm overseas, I have to do work. I don't even know if I can do the work. What if I don't like everybody? What if, a bunch of stupid thoughts really. And I reckon it was close to maybe a week before you had to pull out before a certain date or else you got charged. I reckon maybe the night before even. I was like, Mum, yeah, I think I'm going to pull out. Mum just goes, just do it. Why don't you do it?
Thank you, Mum.
Thank you, Mum. Love you, Mum. She goes, why don't you do it? It's like, fine, all right. So the day rolls over. If I pull out now, it's going to charge me like $500. I'm not paying that. So I went, and I say this wholeheartedly, it is the best thing it's the best decision I've ever made in terms of like an educational thing that I've done.
Wow, that's bold statement up to now.
100%.
Please tell us more.
I just loved it. It was 2 weeks of, it's almost like a social experiment. You get a group of 15 people together from all walks of life. Like university students, you're going to meet a whole bunch of different people. But this class especially, the only uniting thing between all of us at the start was that we'd all studied Japanese at some point. That was pretty much the only thing. You had a Venezuelan, you had like a couple of Chinese, you had a girl from Hong Kong, like a lot of Vietnamese backgrounds, you had like people from everywhere, like everything doing this one thing together. And it went from I've never ever met any of these people before in my life to 2 weeks like together, mate, it was a ball. Like, it became really close. Like, even now, like, you know, hey, even like I've got classes with some of the guys that I was with, and it's awesome. Like, you know, I finally got like, because I did COVID for my first degree. I had no uni mates. I had no one I would call a friend at university. And now I got a couple of people. I'm like, you know what? They're mates.
If anything happens, boom, you can give them a call. Oh, of course.
Whatever. But no, that was awesome, and it was like like uni's uni. Like, it's always going to be a uni. So, but the work was actually pretty interesting. What we did, I felt. We learned about this town. We did a lot of lessons on like the indigenous people there. We did lessons on Japanese language, which really helped me. What I gained from the most of it, what I loved the most about it, was the lunch, recess, and after class, because it was like I was in high school again. It was just a bunch of just mucking around, just having a good time. And it set me up, because I stayed in Japan for 3 months. Those first 2 weeks I did set me up so well for the rest of my time, because all the Japanese students like took us to all this, like the kura sushi. I'd never heard of that. I would never have walked into that before then. I love that joint. Cheap sushi every day you want it. It's unreal. Same as like the little 7-Eleven hacks that, I didn't know anything about. Local, not even like language that you'd never ever learn in a textbook. It's like what actual people say, I should say. Real conversations. You're going to learn more going somewhere for 3 months than you ever will out of a textbook. If you try to, at least, is how I feel about it anyway.
Cool. I think that's a very nice way to put it, because lots of people listening have either come to Australia or maybe thinking of coming to Australia, and then it's like, oh, maybe I should come. And then it's like, yeah, you definitely should. But I would also add up to what you just said, is that you, like in anything, you have to put in the work. I mean, it wasn't that you just went there and, out of the blue, you started to absorb everything. You have to, do a bit of an effort.
Oh, it's 100% trial and error. And here's what I say. Like, I can say that, I can say I can speak Spanish, I can speak Japanese. Every conversation I have, I stuff up. At some point, I'm going to stuff it up. That's okay. Like, I'm going to stuff up the same thing maybe 3 times in the same conversation. It's all right. Keep going.
And how do you handle that? Because for example, I'm telling you, obviously it's a bit different, because some of my students, they want to pass English exams. By the way, if you want to pass IELTS or PTE, get in touch. More than happy to help.
Bloke knows what he's talking about.
Oh, cheers. But then it's like, some people would be like, teacher, I'm afraid of making mistakes.
Never be.
But if I say it, then I'm not going to say boring, but it's like what you hear from a teacher. Tell us why. What do you think about
the worst thing that's going to happen is someone's going to laugh at you. So what? People laugh at me all the time. You're going to make mistakes. That's fine. It's if you make the same mistake, that's fine. I still do it after 10 years now of studying Japanese. I still make some of the same mistakes that I made when I was like 13. Like, my handwriting's bad in every language. I'm going to admit that. And sometimes people see the hiragana I write and they go, "That is shocking." I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm just bad at handwriting. That's fine. The thing with language as well is, and this isn't for an exam. This isn't like, for exams, you got to be proper. You got to be 100%. But in conversations when you're overseas, and I'd argue that's a more intense situation than an exam. That's when like this matters. If that person can't speak English or Spanish, and you've got to try and convey your point across, just do it. And you do it, and even if you muck it up, as long as they've understand you, I consider that a pass. And that's how like you make friends. If they people will laugh at you, but they'll never laugh at you. They'll laugh at what you've said. But they don't think you're an idiot. They don't think you're anything. It's just like you said a word that's funny in their language or something like that. That's fine.
Exactly.
And that's something you should laugh at as well. You sit and go, I'm an idiot. Like, oh, that was dumb, but you keep going.
Yeah, it reminds me, one common false friend in Spanish is like, as you know, there are so many similar words like carro, car. Yep. And someone, one of our mates, Tom, I hope you're watching, Tom, said, he dropped something and he said, estoy embarazado. And then everyone started laughing because, estoy embarazado is not I am embarrassed, it is I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant, yeah.
So it's, that's obviously not what he wanted to say, but that's a really good point. And
there's a couple of those really good examples in Spanish as well.
I know,
that do
crazy.
Because like Emilio said, a lot of Spanish translates pretty well to English if you kind of switch a couple letters around, put an accent on. There are some that, like to say someone's annoying in English, how you would say it in Spanish sounds very bad in English again. Like molesta.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
true.
And that one, so
That's so true. That's really bad as well.
yeah, that's a terrible one. If you don't speak Spanish to hear that one.
Yeah, because and I imagine someone being like, "Hey, teach a friend, he's molesting me." That's terrible.
But yeah, no, language is one of those things that you are going to mess, and it's a fact. And you can be doing it for 20 years and you are still going to mess it up. Like, that's fine.
I think that's highly motivating, and also like putting down the barriers, because a lot of students think, putting aside passing a test, like you said, that, oh, I'm in Australia, I got to speak perfect English. And, this is a melting pot with so many people from all around the world. Another thing that I have to say now, it is the reason I brought you to the podcast. We were having a beer with some friends, you said, so I'm going to paraphrase you and correct me if I'm wrong, or tell us. You said something along the lines of the ultimate satisfaction when you learn a language is to make a friend. Or when you get to the point of, mate, I can talk to you, I can have a conversation, I can have a friend, make a friend. I don't know. Can you please tell us a bit about that? When I heard, I said, mate, Billy, you need to come to the podcast, bro. We need to talk about this.
No, so I've studied many subjects, in my life. I love history. I love world politics, world diplomacy. I did science. I did a science degree, my first degree. But I've never had a subject. I call them subjects because I've studied them as subjects. But languages is more than a subject. It is like the number one most powerful tool that humans have. And I love it as a subject at school though, because you have instant gratification. The day you can walk in to a pub in the middle of some country, that isn't your own, and you can sit down next to a bloke, you have a beer, you have a chat, you have a laugh, and you walk away and you made a friend. That's instant gratification. That's all those years, hard years of study, and paid off. That is something that I've never seen in any of my other subjects. You can know a bunch of history facts, you can study history in and out, but you're not going to get the gratification for all that hard work you put in the same way you will if you've made a friend in a pub in some place that you're not from. And that's just how I feel about it. Yeah. I reckon that's the number one. There's a bunch of reasons you should study languages, but I think one of the top ones for me is just being able to connect with people from all over the world.
I think the challenge and the good thing about gratification is that, as you know, because you have studied Spanish, Japanese as well, and English being your mother tongue, is that that it is not so easy to just go to another country, talk to people in another language, with all the intricacies that you've got there. But then getting to that point when you can have a conversation, even if you're making mistakes, don't be shy. Then you just get so much from it, because it's like, oh my God, all the hard work that I've put up to this point, memorizing grammar tables or practicing or listening to a podcast, and thank you for watching and listening to the podcast, or whatever you may have been doing. It's like, oh, this is paying off.
Well, my first ever Spanish lesson was day 2 in Uruguay, and me and Leon and our other mate Marcus were sitting at the bar, about 10 o'clock at night. And the bartender inside is a very pretty girl. And I was like, how do I say to her, do you want to go out, the next day or something like that? And Leon sat down with me for an hour, drilling in like a phrase in Spanish that I actually can't remember now, but it's like, after work, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah.
I'd never spoken Spanish, and I sat there for an hour, memorizing that. Like, do you have Instagram? Do you want to go out after? Like, all right. I walk in and I go and say it to her, and she responds in perfect English. Yeah, we can hang out tomorrow. I was like, you know what? Still, that's gratification right there. That's me. I went in, and I don't do that in English, nervous or whatever, but I was like there. He drew it into me for an hour, went inside, and we hung out the next day. It was
good,
cool.
and she understood.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I always say that at the very beginning, as long as there is communication happening, that's good. You get the message across, and then you polish it. Because it's what you were saying. Obviously, it's different having a chat in a bar, in a pub, or talking to someone in uni, whatever, versus taking a test where you need to basically...
The first thing's intention, second thing's perfection. You got to be...
Oh, that's a good one.
You've got to be able to get your message across, all right? Once they've understood you, you've got to be able to articulate it clearly. So you can say you start learning a language and you go, I want to go to school. Okay, they've understood what you mean. You want to go to a school, but then you have to the next step is being, I want to go to this school and I want to do this, and then there's levels to it. When I'm doing this, I also want to be able to do it. It just keeps going. It never stops. But the first most important thing is getting that first bit down. Just get your intention across. Then you can build upon it.
Nice. You know, Billy, I'm also wondering, before we touch into bringing students into Australia, like showing them around, I just wonder, how has it been from people around you, friends or family? In my case, when I started learning Japanese, people called me crazy. What am I doing that, etc., etc. I wonder, how was your experience?
Right. Well, at the start, nothing, because you had to do it for school. All my friends, would make fun of me because, like, to a lot of them, and like I get it as well. Japanese is a very different language to English, and when they hear a lot of the sounds, they think they just sound silly. It's like, fair enough. Like to stand up. People at my high school, like my mates who know no Japanese, know how to say sit down, stand up, sit down, and then I had to say. They say like everyone comes up to me and like everyone still calls me Biddy. Like my mates call me Biri because like in Japanese my name isn't Billy, it's Biri, but they call me Biri. Like they just can't. That's what people just call me. And things like that. And I don't know. Like a lot of my mates have recently, not a lot, but a good mate of mine, has recently started learning Spanish. And I was at his house for dinner the other night, and he's practicing Spanish with me. He goes like, "Do you want a drink?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, do you have water?" This is all in Spanish. And he's like, "Oh yeah, here's the water." And like I'm like, this is actually, for me, this is really cool that a mate of mine is finally showing like an interest in something that is a major interest to me. Because a lot of them, and I don't, it's not a knock on them either. You don't have to be interested in language, but that's one of my major things that I like to do. So it really, again, another bit of gratification for me is when my mates also start doing it. But no one ever said it was silly. I don't think no one ever thought it was stupid. I think a lot of them come at it with the mindset of like, I can't do it, which I think silly in of itself, but you know, you can't change how someone feels.
Well, true.
Yeah, but no one's ever knocked me for it, I don't think.
So you mentioned how going overseas has been one of the best things that happened to you. The study tour, going to South America.
Yep.
But this is you as an Aussie experiencing other cultures and traveling. But I'm just wondering, how was it the reverse when we had students that came from Japan, some of them for the first time to Australia? And you know, we were the first impression of them being overseas. How was that experience for you?
That was really cool. That was a really fun week. It was only just last week or 2 weeks ago.
I think, maybe like 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago.
Yeah, about 1.5 weeks ago. And that was really cool. I know Piers, a previous guest of the podcast.
Thank you, Piers.
Thanks,
Lots of
Piers.
planning.
He said it best. He goes, "It's cool being a tourist in your own city." I was like, kind of was. Like, we went to South Melbourne Beach. I've actually never been to South Melbourne Beach before and done that walk along the pier. I was there doing it with friends that I'd made in like new friends from Australia and with new friends from Japan. Two of the students who'd come over helped us when we were in Mururam. And it was great seeing them again. Oh, you know, love those guys. Everyone was really nice for all the Japanese students, and they really embraced it. I think they also love hanging out with just a bunch of us. Like, you know, again, same sort of thing. We go to the pub every night. You know, we muck around, we do some stupid stuff. I taught them how to kick a football. That was awesome.
Oh, there you go.
Enjoyed that. But it was good. It was great. Good fun. And good for me, seeing my own city. Good again, practicing Japanese every day. And yeah, just good feel like you're a part of something. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's like you're to have an impact on someone's life.
Exactly right. Because my initial thought when the question got put out to us, is anyone available to help? And I said, well, they helped me when I was over there, so I'd like to help them while they're here. And I was also unemployed at the time, so had nothing better to do with my time. So yeah.
Cool. And, you know, I'm just wondering, our teacher talked a lot about aha moments.
Yes,
So I'm just wondering, in your trip to Japan or when they came to Australia, did you have any aha moments?
It sounds like my assessment all over again, Emilio.
Oh.
It is. I didn't know this was a test. Yeah, you have an aha moment every day, I think. You see,
okay.
Yeah, you see, like, especially when you're in a place like Japan, which like culturally is a lot different to Australia. Even South America, like a lot different. It's actually too many to think about now.
Just to give an example, and then you can think about it.
Yeah.
one big aha moment for me was I remember the teacher asking me if I was okay being the oldest, and I didn't really know what she meant by that. But then a big aha moment is that, look, I'm not Japanese. I mean, I could feel Japanese, I could feel Aussie, but I'm not none of them. You know, officially I'm not Australian and I'm not Japanese. A part of me feels though. But being in Japan, you know, I would be, for example, with you, and I remember this. We would be having dinner, and then there is like a kanji up on the wall, and it's like, Hefe, what's that? Is this, I don't know, does that mean water? And I'm like, no, Billy, that means ice. For example, whatever it may be. But then in the same setting, there would be Japanese people, and a part of me is like, shush, they're asking me when there is Japanese people. Or the other way around, like there would be Japanese students, and we would be with peers and other friends. And some of them, they would come to me and ask stuff in English, and a part of me is like, damn, I'm not a native speaker. They're asking me, and I don't know, you know, that was a bit of a shock for me. Good shock, of course.
Well, actually, so after the study tour and after a couple months, I got to be the Emilio for two of my friends.
Tell me more.
Two of my Australian friends came to Japan and come around, and they knew nothing. They knew no Japanese whatsoever. They knew relatively little about any cultural things. And I'm not going to pretend I'm some expert or nothing, but I think I know a bit more than the average Australian does.
Oh, 100%.
I walked around and they're saying like, why are they saying sumimasen? Like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's like, it's a very useful word, means a bunch of things. But in this case, they're just saying like, they're just trying to get my attention. They're like, okay, Bill, why'd you just yell at the sushi chef? I'm like, oh, because in a sushi restaurant, you have to yell sumimasen to get the guy's attention. He'll come over and give you, it's not rude like in Australia. And there's those guys, from me explaining a bunch of things that are happening, I actually, and it's because when you explain it to me, it just goes in my head and goes like, oh, that's how it is. You know what I mean? I don't really think like that's weird or that's different or whatever. And then those guys would be like, so why do they do this? I'd explain it to them and I'd go, that's weird. And I'd think and go, oh, that is kind of different, eh? That's not really what, like the sushi chef thing. I didn't think anything of it. Like, because I've been in Japan so long, by that point, I don't yell at the waiters here, by the way. But like over there, you're meant to go, oh, hey, like this is my order. And that's fine. That's perfectly, it's not rude or anything. If you try to pull that here, you know, the waiter probably wouldn't serve you. If you were going, oh, I can't over, like, you know, take it.
They would take it the wrong way.
Yeah, that's why my mates were like, you just yelled at that guy. I was like, no, like you're meant to do that. Like, trust me. Emilio told me I can do it. It's fine.
Whoa, no way.
Even like, I taught my mate like I taught him like the greeting. So by the end of the trip, he could say, hello, my name is Tom. Nice to meet you. I hope we get along. And that was a bit of a proud moment for me as well, because he sat there and made an effort. My other mate, not so great with it, but that's okay, you know.
He tried.
Oh, he'll hate this if he hears this. Thank you, Mark. I love you. The guy in the pub, he gives us our food, and he looks at Mark and he goes, "Salad dressing," and Mark looks at me and goes, "Billy, what did he just say?" And I was like, "Mark, he said it was salad dressing. Like, it's not too hard to work out, mate."
Oh, come on! But I feel you know.
Even my other mate there, Tom, was like, "Mark, you're so stupid. What are you doing?" But that was a funny one.
Because he's like Sarada dressing.
Yeah. Mark's one of the most intelligent blokes I know. Like, he's a very smart man, but that moment just made me laugh. Like, just for some people, language is just one of those things that's not easy to pick up. And so a massive credit to all you who do study it. It's not easy, and keep going. It's worth it at the end of it. Yeah.
Billy, look, it's been amazing, and I hope you enjoyed being the Emilio of the trip. That's such an honor. So thank you.
Bloody good to be it, I reckon.
Oh, sick. Yeah. And look, can you now, just to wrap up, because we talked about traveling, learning languages, culture, and well, you know, you have to go to class, and anyways.
Don't have to go to class. It's a choice. It's always a choice.
There we go. Look, I'm just wondering, anything you would like to tell to international students? For example, now in Australia, lots of people are coming, and you know, ever since the borders opened, more and more students are coming in. Just recently, the test requirements are getting a bit more difficult.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so there's a bit of stress for the international student community. But putting that on the side, with all the things we talked about, any final message, anything you would like to share with our viewers, anyone listening to us on Spotify? And by the way, thank you, like I said, I'll do the thank you bit later. So any final message or anything you would like to say that we haven't had a chance?
Yeah, if you're an international student or even just someone overseas thinking about coming to Australia, please do. If you're going to be a foreigner anywhere, I reckon this is nearly the best country to do it in. Like, there's so many communities of so many different people. Like, even if you feel alone, chances are there is a community of people from the same country as you somewhere, and you can go find them and hang out. Like, you walk down the street in Melbourne, and you probably couldn't tell which country you're in, besides the fact like the signs are in English, and that's about it. That's probably the only giveaway. Which is an awesome thing about this city, is how like diverse it is, how many different cultures there are. You can have a bit of every part of the world here. I think it's a great place to come to. And in Australia, it's always been called the land of opportunity. That's why my grandmother came here all the way back in the 50s, you know. Italy wasn't a great place to be, and they came here and they set up a whole life, and now I'm here, and I'm incredibly grateful that she did that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Billy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Part of me feels that this may not be our only episode. I would love to have a part 2.
Oh, anytime, Emilio, anytime.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And not only thank you for coming, sharing these stories. Thank you for those of you on YouTube. Thank you for everyone listening on Spotify. You know, anyone, some of them, I mean, people could be on their commute. Maybe they're exercising, cleaning their place. I don't know, they're watching. And thank you for that. Let us know in the comments what you think about the episode. And, well, if you're on Spotify, let us know as well.
Yep.
And this was episode 87 of the Teacher Emilio
taking
podcast.
Off.
Slowly.
It's going global.
I know. Slowly picking up.
Yep.
And once again, Billy, thank you so much.
No, thank
it was
you.
a pleasure. I hope you had as much of a good time as I did.
Oh, I had a ball.
Oh, awesome. And well, part 2 will happen soon. Let's wait a few months, then we'll touch up.
Don't want people getting sick of me yet.
Oh, no. I doubt it. You have won their hearts, especially with the Spanish bit. So, muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thanks, Billy, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Boom.